Welcome, everyone. I'm Sandra Bargman. A few years ago, I wrote and performed a solo show called The Edge of Every Day, which was an exploration of the rough edges and contradictions we all face and grapple with. The show hit a nerve, and the relevance of the topic would only grow over time, more than I could have foreseen. So, here we are. Real talk with real people, sharing stories and perspectives that spark provocative invitations to leap out of what's safe, on the edge of every day. Thanks for listening. Hello, everyone. We are live in the hive. Thank you for joining me on this, the 40th episode of The Edge of Every Day here on talkradio.nyc. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, and for those of you who don't know me yet, I encourage you to check out my bio on talkradio.nyc, or of course, you can visit my website, sandrabargman.com. And please tune into any of my previous episodes with my inspiring guests. All of my loyal listeners know this show is about celebrating triumphs, pushing boundaries, and exploring rough edges. Through conversations and shared stories with friends and colleagues, it's my hope that we can begin to understand our edges. And what I mean by edges is those places where we are fearful, those places where we are resistant to change, those places where paradoxes and contradictions live in our beliefs and in our understandings, both about ourselves and about the world around us. Those places where we don't want to look. Listen, we live in turbulent times, and we are coming to understand that life simply isn't black or white. It must be an embrace of both. And the more we recognize our own edges and get real about them, the more we can help others to do the same. And that, I fully believe, can help to change the world. So, thanks again for tuning in. And without further ado, it is time for me to introduce our guest this evening. Rebecca Louie is a beekeeper, master composter, and executive director of the Bee Conservancy, a nonprofit organization dedicated to protecting bees, safeguarding the environment, and securing food justice through community-based education, research, habitat creation, and advocacy. A lifelong storyteller, she has written for numerous news and lifestyle publications, including former features writer at the New York Daily News and arts editor at Vibe magazine. And she has authored the book Compost City, Practical Composting Know-How for Small Space Living. Compost City is a guide for the eco-curious on how to choose and care for a compost system that fits perfectly into any space, any schedule, and any lifestyle. As seen in New York Magazine, Elle.com, Organic Life, treehugger.com, and more, Compost City is packed with research, expert testimonies, step-by-step tutorials, and a healthy dose of humor to educate and convert the compost wary. A former brand strategist and creative director, Rebecca has worked with marketing, product, and technology teams to build global organizations. She splits her time between the Catskill Mountains and New York City with her dog, Max. Hello and welcome, Rebecca.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you and happy 40th.
Thank you. I am so excited to have you here. Oh my goodness. And that very Max that you've spoken of is in the room too.
Yes, he may join us at any moment.
I'm hoping so. I hope he weighs in on all of it. So as I like to do with my listeners, I like to tell how I know my guests. And I love how you and I met. Rebecca and I live in the same community in the Catskill Mountains, and we met through a mutual friend who showed up for my birthday party, my big fat 6-0, on the wrong day with Rebecca.
Yes, we were a week early. But we brought cheese and brownies.
Indeed, you really did. And she didn't know me well enough for special brownies, but we're getting there. Anyway, it was fantastic. And both my husband and I felt such a kinship with you. But Rebecca didn't share with me at that time what she did, and that she was the executive director of the Bee Conservancy. And when I heard that, I was like, we're on the podcast. Bees are my thing, live in the hive. And so on that note, Rebecca, please indulge me because it's the 40th. I do want to quickly remind our listeners of why bees and live in the hive are so important to me. And of course, why, obviously, I'm so thrilled to have you on the show. So the solo show, The Edge of Every Day, upon which this podcast is based, was the first solo show that I did through Sacred Stages LLC, my company. And it was the merging of my ministry with my performance background, and where the first time I was speaking out with spiritual understandings, if you will. It was kind of my version of preaching, as I like to say. So, of course, I wove many different understandings, but one of them that is a part of my practice is Native American wisdom, and the understanding that animals walk through the world with medicine or wisdom to share if we pay attention. And there were 3 animals, and for the sake of our conversation, the bee was one of them. And of course, it was for obviously communication. And we did a really funny thing with the waggle dance to get people to know each other. And for the sake of the podcast, fierce conversations and collaboration and connection and common community. So, what I always say is, whether you're connected to bees in a spiritual capacity in the way that I am, and I like to learn about the ancient traditions that have revered the bee, or if you come to, a perspective of just appreciating it from a practical or metaphorical angle, or even through an environmental lens, the bees are just powerful. It's powerful, powerful work. And of course, we're going to get to your bee work and your gardening and your composting and all of that. But before we dive in, you in particular, but so many of my guests wear so many different hats. They have so many different skills. They have had intriguing paths and career adventures, and have come to a place where they're synthesizing all of those skills and all of those hats and all of all of that work and all of those identities, which is a part of learning to understand our rough edges and understanding about pushing our boundaries. And I put myself in that category. And I was recently asked a really fascinating question, and I'm going to pose it to you because I think you're going to have a fabulous answer, and I will share my answer afterwards. So, what identity or identities do you, Rebecca, lead with?
Okay. I'm not completely sure I understand the question. I'm just going to go with what I'm reacting to, right? You kind of said it in your introduction. I lead as a storyteller because to me, I think stories are how we connect. They're what make the abstract personal. They're what make the scary maybe a little more, sensitive or less scary. And for me, and probably over the course of this conversation, for better and worse, I'll probably talk about brands or stories, because everything to me is just an amazing narrative. So I think first and foremost, I process most things through the lens of narrative and story. I think there's a world where leader and collaborator kind of intermingle, right? Everyone takes turns the front, at the back, letting other people shine, blah, 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 blah. So maybe that's what I'll start.
I love that. And the synthesis of that, and that you have that as a deck of cards at your disposal. So I had if I thought of you, it would have been storytelling. And I mean, you are so dynamic in your narrative understanding. So the ones that I said was, I almost said storytelling, but I said comedian. I said comedian because I think I lead with humor, and I often, when I don't know people, and I said shaman. Interesting.
Well, there's subversiveness to comedian too, you know. It's always the fool who can get away with a lot of like.
Yeah, it can bring a lot of truth. Bingo.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the, part of the wisdom that was woven into the solo show was that, yeah, exactly. Disarming humor, make them think. So, so you were not always a green girl, were you, Rebecca?
No, it was not at all.
Talk to us about that.
Sure. So I grew up in New York City. I'm a Queens girl, lifelong, still there. And, we had a yard, but I used to always like hang out on the patio, very like concrete forward mentality. And I did not, for the life of me, think about the environment or parks or trees. There's even places to recreate in.
Wow. And your family never went there?
No, I mean, I have immigrant parents. So they were physicians, and they worked like a full-time job and had a private practice. It's that 80s latchkey story on top of an immigrant story. It's like the perfect Sunday.
Right.
Youth shaping. And so, we didn't really do a lot of the things that maybe more American families did to recreate. Like, we did not really recreate that much. So I read a lot of books.
Well, I don't even think any New Yorkers did really. And it's still, with Tom, with the parks, they don't. Yeah. But anyway, continue.
Well, so blah, blah, blah. You basically have to fast forward into my like late 20s. Right. And at that point, I'm like, I've been an entertainment reporter as an entertainment.
Yeah. Before you get into that, tell us about that. Tell us about the red carpet a little bit. Indulge us about your life on the red carpet first.
Yeah. So, again, like this idea of storytelling, I've always been interested in like the why. And so, I studied a lot of critical and cultural theory in college, and it was like, what kind of job is this going to be? And like, I'm going to go think for a living. But actually, it worked out because I enjoyed writing my whole life. And I was like, oh, let's get into the arts. Let's talk about why we're, obsessed with this celebrity, or why there's a weird trend in, this type of, eating or couture or high or low or whatever. Why is someone at number one? Why did we freak out when this couple broke up? I mean, it's kind of like we are obsessed whether or not we want to admit it.
We are indeed addicted to our consumptive culture. Indeed.
So how could we, I like sort of picking apart the why and the how and what was at stake in terms of gender or power or sexuality. I mean, but of course, you kind of get one deep thought in the like, language of just writing for a tabloid or a magazine. You have to know your audience and show up in a way that is comfortable. So anyway, so that's what I did. And then so I did work at the Daily News. I worked for a bunch of magazines, and got to fly around the world. And I was like a gossip columnist for a while, which was like brutal, literally red carpet, so like knife and the elbows in your face, and everyone's yelling.
Oh my Lord.
Waiting for people to show up to parties that they never come to, and just standing in the dark. Like, there was early cell phone days, so it's not like you had much to do on your phone. So yeah.
Pre-addictive day.
Yeah, actually, it's true. That's so true.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was life for a while, and it's actually funny because I think that is related to like how my life shifted a lot, because one, first all the Us Weeklies and the kind of those celebrity magazine, there's like a boom of them, right? Like in the aughts. And so suddenly arts writing, where there was room to be a little bit critical and interesting or exploratory of ideas, turned into like who's, like whose wardrobe malfunction, this and that, and it's like, oh, the hottest nannies that guys broke up with. And suddenly it shifted, and that was the competition. So that was very heartbreaking. And so speaking of edges, super depressing and really kind of hard to suddenly be talking about like boobs and things instead of like why we're, ashamed of or scared of breasts, or like, I don't know, right. The angle shifted.
Yeah.
And so,
and then
Oh, then print died.
And then print died. And then we've got to go to a break. So then in your late 20s, you started. When we come back after our commercial break, I can't wait to hear how the transition into making a choice to going a little more green, to going in composting, when we come back on the Edge of Every Day with Rebecca Louie. Stay tuned, everyone.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you on edge? Hey, we live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in. I'm Sandra Bargman, the host of The Edge of Every Day, which airs each Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and perspectives about pushing boundaries and exploring our rough edges. That's The Edge of Every Day on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Chipping around, kick my brain to the ground. These are the days it never rained, but it pours on the edge of every day.
And we are back with Rebecca Louie of the Bee Conservancy. So, Rebecca, so tell us, how did you begin to make that transition from being a red carpet walker to more of a green living person? Was it this big aha moment? Probably not. It was just a series of, smaller insights and understandings and things being taken away from you.
Yeah, basically. So when I walked away from print, and I was all like, I'm going to have some sort of revolution. You slowly have dwindling freelance funds and you're cooking a lot more. And with the cooking, I was like, this has got to be good for something. This like piles of veggie scraps and yada, yada. So I looked on the internet, which is a source of so much great information. And was like, I'm going to start composting. And I got these worms and there's this whole, I'm sure we'll talk about worms, but I was like, great, you feed them this amount. And then basically I killed like 1,000 worms very quickly in a very gnarly, smelly, like devastating way. Because you like, just to add like the feeling of failure on top of,
Right, exactly. Well, that's one of my questions. Tell us about a big fat failure in all of this.
Right. So wormicide, like mass wormicide. So I was like, clearly there's a way to do it right? So because I had this free time, because I was sort of freelancing and figuring out how to just like what comes next, print's dead, I don't want to go to digital. I took my master composter certification in New York City. Which is back up. How did you discover this? This is just, I just took a master composting, because I was so, That was one good thing that the internet did tell me, that there was this class. Now, and where is it through? Is it through New York City and NYC? Yeah, so it was a Department of Sanitation program that at the time, there's several host sites across New York City. Mine was at the Queen's Botanical Garden. I will say, though, that the master composter concept was not invented in New York. It actually is from out west, and you can read about it in my book because we talked to the founders. It's like being a master gardener. Like there's this kind of title everywhere, but I will say New York's program is insanely robust. There's a whole curricula. It takes place over several months.
Wow.
And there's the whole community component or like a volunteer component, which actually was weirdly how my whole life changed. So I had to do a final project super fast, to graduate. And so one of the things that I did created was this idea of the compostess, right? I was like, well, who's and this was a brand idea, right?
Oh, totally. The merging, as we talked about, the merging of your skills.
Yeah, I was like, well, I've done a lot of kind of thinking about lifestyle, and I know people are interested, eco-curious, but, up until now in my experience in New York, learning how to compost it was more of you have to go to a place and there'd be all these bins everywhere. And, it was a very, you went to the expertise and it was
scientific or academic. And yeah.
But yeah. But then there are people who are the personal trainers set maybe, who might want the expertise to come to them. So I created this final project, this idea of the compostess. I was like, who needs a clown? Make Wharton bins with your kids' friends. What was cute and fun? I'll consult your waste stream. And somehow this website, thank you search engine optimization and other, technologies, got a little bit of traction, and I got a lot of press. I guess it's one reporter creating a story, for other reporters.
This is so fantastic.
It was super random, super random.
The compostess.com, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
More active on Instagram, though. I'm not really updating websites. So then then once I started getting press, things started changing, and someone reached out to me and see if I was working on a book, and boom, literally, boom, along the way, a weird career at a virtual world for teenage girls, weird stuff happened in this period. And then I got the book and I was like, yay.
Right. Now I'm in more of a groove. Yeah. So that, okay. So, and I can so see, I was thinking of you getting this idea and thinking it's like if Sex and the City and the composting experts had a baby, it would be this book, this filled with wisdom, as it says, filled with, and this is where do I have, let's get to, I have a couple of testimonials about the book that I want to read about you people. Rebecca Louie's small and handy book debunks the myths about composting, including the most disabling myth that you can't do it well in a suburb or a city. Louie makes the chemistry of compost and the various methods, open air, vermiculture, trench composting, bokashi, easy to understand. This is my favorite one, though. You've never seen a book on composting like this one, I rest assured. It's wonderful. No excuses, no putting it off. Compost City guides even the most squeamish sophisticate into delightful partnership with browns, greens, and worms. Love that. So there's a perfect little seg into composting. Tell us about, first of all, what is compost and what's the difference between dirt and soil?
It's the difference between the people you like at a party and the people you don't. So basically, dirt is how Jay-Z is get it off your shoulder. It's that is dead. It is kind of lifeless, nothing, right? Soil, however, is an ecosystem. It's a universe of living things that work with each other and for each other to thrive. And so compost is a soil amendment. It's special sauce in the soil that does a whole bunch of things between slow release nutrients to helping it to hold water and air, and ultimately feeds plants and the microorganisms that are in it. So those are the three: compost, dirt, soil.
Okay. And okay. But there has to be in a certain sort of recipe, a certain kind of recipe. And is that contingent you know, and I love, it's like a party. What did I hear? I heard something you talking about. It's like a party. You're creating a party scene. You're bringing in these elements and you're inviting the party to come in. And there's a certain recipe. So, but the recipe is different obviously for different ways of composting and different sizes. So if let's use me, because I want to compost, because I've talked about this with you, it's obnoxious that I don't do it, and either in the city or upstate. So I want to start in both places. How do I do that in a way that's not overwhelming in my small space and my bigger space upstate?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think start with you, right? Meaning, what's the bare minimum that you can do? Anyone could do.
Right.
And that could literally be something like, I had a cup of tea, I'm taking my tea bag and I'm burying it in the dirt, and that's all I'm doing this week or this month. You know, one tea bag, which will disintegrate because the outside is paper,
sure.
Blah, blah, blah. Okay. I mean, decompose, I should say, as
yeah.
I did it. So some people might be like, oh, like one tea bag, that doesn't feel like whatever, it doesn't help. But if you do like magic people math and you're like, there's X many million people here, we all did one tea bag a month in the soil, like that's pretty good. That's returning some amount of like carbon and organic nutrients there, right? So I don't know, so start with what's realistic, like what can you do? What are you willing to do? And set yourself up to succeed, because I think one problem is that on the flip side of maybe what you're describing, people get so amped, like me with my first worm bin, they're like, I'm going to compost it all, right? And have an empire. And then like you set yourself up for disaster, because getting back to that recipe, there is some science, right? There's like decomposing stuff, it's wet, it kind of emits certain odors if combined a certain way or gets mucky. And so you want to have control over that and understand how the greens, which are the nitrogen rich wet stuff, the browns, which is the carbony brown dry stuff, like the forest floor leaves, or like paper is the equivalent. But how do they mix up? And so, you know, when you say recipe, like what works for you? Some people like to think of it as a cocktail, which gives you a bit of freedom. Like you add a little bit more of this and more of that, and that works for you. And like, meaning works for you, your space, your time, but also for the materials themselves. And yeah, every system has its own kind of ratio that feeds the recipe, and it's up to you to mix it up and make it work in your space and time.
And what do you say to people who are, okay, we've got 2 minutes to break. What do you say to people who that don't understand the messiness and are afraid to get into this because of it's maybe a little more dirty than they're thinking, or it's just gross. How do you handle that, and what do you say to them to inspire them to move past that?
Yeah, well, I would just say that, guess what? It only gets gnarly, it only gets messy, it's only icky if you're not doing it right. So it's like if you're making lasagna and you're just like, I'm going to throw this ground beef in my face and I'm fed, like that's not exactly how it works, you know? But if people take the little bit of education they need to get started and they follow some really simple rules, it'll be magic. That's all. And it literally is that simple. Like it's like anything. If you do it right, you'll do it well. But if you
what do you suggest as a container for the first timer? What is, because I bought this little metal thing and it totally didn't work. Of course, I didn't set it up properly, but what do you suggest as of the first step into it?
I think if you have access to outdoor space, the first easiest thing to do is to dig a big hole, dump some banana peels in there, cover it up.
Oh, okay.
Walk away. Never again. You have fed the earth. And the only tip I would say is that if you're doing that, you should always bury food waste, like about 8 inches or so of soil above it, just to deter critters. And
right. And you suggest just plant food waste, of course, not necessarily anything oily or chicken bony or anything like that.
I mean, I will say there's a system for that called.
Oh, there has to be, of course, but
that's like a level 2, you know.
Yeah, like exactly. Not for the starter. Don't be burying your half-eaten chicken carcass.
The dead bodies.
Right.
JK, I do not.
Don't. Okay. Well, we've got to go to break. Of course, as always the case, Rebecca, there's just only an hour and so many questions, and I want to move on. Composting, you have to get Compost City, and it goes into far greater detail, obviously, than we've touched upon. And we'll get back to that at the end of the show and give you all of those connections. But when we come back, we're going to move on from composting, and we're going to move into your wonderful work at the Bee Conservancy. When we come back with Rebecca Louie on the Edge of Every Day. Stay tuned.
Are you passionate about the conversation around racism? Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. TLC, host of the Dismantle Racism Show, which airs every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc. Join me and my amazing guests as we discuss ways to uncover, dismantle, and eradicate racism. That's Thursdays at 11 o'clock a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a small business trying to navigate the COVID-19 related employment laws? Hello, I'm Eric Sauver, employment law business law attorney and host of the new radio show, Employment Law Today. On my show, we'll have guests to discuss the common employment law challenges business owners are facing during these trying times. Tune in on Tuesday evenings from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Chipping around, kick my brain to the ground. These are the days it never rained, but it pours
on the edge of every day. And we are back with Rebecca Louie. I neglected to let everyone know that we're taking questions with Rebecca. So toss your questions, anything you want to ask her, into the chat, and we will hopefully be able to take a few of those. But I want to say I lied. I'm not going to jump right into the Bee Conservancy because I realized I didn't ask you the one. I think that probably that addresses one of the biggest edges, the question. We frogged over it. The benefits of composting. You talk about the three big benefits, and they're so full of edges that I want to make sure that we touch on those three benefits.
Sure. I mean, on the very macro level, right? It's great for the environment. So, over a third of what goes to landfills today is compostable. And then the trucks that are driving all that around are consuming fossil fuels.
It's enormous. And its connection to food justice, which we'll get into.
Yeah, and there's there's a soil crisis. Actually, we're losing tons of the Earth's topsoil every single year. And that literally is what sustains us, because it's where everything grows up from that we live on. So that's the macro. On a more immediate level, we talked about this a little bit, but it's really good for the soil in that it helps plants and the ecosystems there, right? By the slow release nutrients, by creating pockets for water and air. It really gives your plants a type of health that some of those more Red Bull style plant fertilizers in quotes will not do, right? It's those are really like a Red Bull on your plant as more powerful. But I will say that in recent years, I've been most compelled by, especially obviously this pandemic and sort of the state of how the country and the world has been in the last few years. There's something really powerful for the individual in it. I've gotten, I think of it as actually a practice now, and people practice like a yoga practice, a meditation practice, a diet, the Peloton, whatever is your thing. That's how I incorporate composting, because I find it gets me out of my head. It's natural. It's higher than me, meaning it has its own order and logic that has
Oh my
predated
goodness.
human like it is ancient, right? And it's very intentional, and it's a cycle. Talk about, rejuvenation, new life.
Yes, and
rebirth.
death feeding life and circling around. It's spirit filled.
Yes,
absolutely. Connects us.
Screen filled. No screens.
Yeah, truly. No addiction to phones, as we mentioned.
Yeah,
it is. I very much want to connect to that. I joke a lot about wanting to garden, and I've had a country home for 20 years. And have I even had a pot of herbs? No, I'm getting there. I'm going to graduate. We're going to ask Anne for that.
She'll come like
totally. But we mentioned the food justice, which is a great seg into the Bee Conservancy and as a part of the mission. So how did you get connected to the Bee Conservancy? What was that trajectory?
Yeah, so I mean, you've mentioned upstate. Our area is surrounded by 25,000 acres of state land. So I have this like little cabin. And I was like, okay, back then, it was just over a decade ago, there was the colony collapse disorder headline was very big, like, a third plus of the world's bees were just disappearing. They were like, is it aliens? Yeah. Is it whatever? I was like, we've got this land, I'm just going to give it a shot and try to take care of bees, which is a whole other story. That is not easy, P.S. To become a honey beekeeper. It's actually a lot of education and work and sometimes heartache. But getting back to free opportunities, at least for me in New York City, there was this amazing course that I took through a group that doesn't exist anymore, but it was several weeks. And, I will say too, in terms of the edge and the benefit of these practices, you find community.
Indeed.
Right? You find community through composting. That's really common in cities and schools and community gardens, like people doing it together. Similar beekeeping. And so I met a bunch of these urban beekeepers, and the founder of the Bee Conservancy is named Guillermo Fernandez, and he built the organization. Originally, it was the Honey Bee Conservancy, and his point of view is, he grew up an immigrant kid in like a not great urban area. It was a food desert, meaning there was very little access to fresh food. There were all these health issues in the area, and as he became a beekeeper in his adulthood, he was like, the health of these bees, which pollinate 1 in 3 bites of food that we eat.
Say that again, please. Listen, people.
So bees, I have 2 good ones. Bees pollinate 1 in 3 bites of every food that we eat, plus all bee species, of which there are 20,000 on this earth, pollinate 80% of the world's flowering plants. So, when we say save the bees, we're not just being cute. Like, they're considered a keystone species.
Indeed.
And so, Guillermo was like, this is a food justice issue. And so that was sort of the heart of the organization. And a couple of years ago, so we became friends, and then I was advisor for a couple of years. And then when and then on the brand and marketing side.
Yes, I love that.
And then when I joined, the organization officially, we transitioned to the Bee Conservancy because, honeybees are about like 7 of that 20,000 species worldwide, and people don't necessarily realize that because they get a lot of the play. And, obviously they make honey, which people love, and wax, but all these other native species.
Right. That don't live, with all of my research, they live in compost?
I mean, they live everywhere. So it's
of course, but yeah.
Right? No, but 70% of the world's bees live underground, which is bizarre. There's like a subterranean like bee rave under the ground. but also different than honeybees, they live solitary lives. Like there are a handful of other species. Bumblebees are a little bit social. So they'll be like, maybe a couple hundred bumblebees in a colony. And then a honeybee colony will be like, 50, 60,000 at its biggest. But these other bees, they're just like cute little, not to totally anthropomorphize it, but I'm going to totally, but they're like little loners or like solitary introverts just hanging out, perpetuating species one-on-one. And so that's a very different concept, right?
Yeah. Totally. So how long did you beekeep?
I bee kept, I would say actively for about 4 or 5 years. And then most recently, maybe 3 years ago, upstate where I had my hives, the black bear, dragged, got through the electric fence that I built, and then managed to get through the ratchet straps that were all over the hives and drag the hive into the woods and eat it. And, that's actually ecologically, I'm rather that than other things, in that the bears had a limited food source that year. There wasn't a lot out there. I get it. There's a lot of protein and sugar in there for them. But then I was just like, I can't. So now I'm lucky because our organization has several sites around the city. And so I do get to put on my hood every now and then and light a smoker.
And go and be with them.
Yeah, but
I saw that on BTV.
Oh, yes, BTV.
Indeed. So when did you step in as the executive director?
Well, I was hired as a managing director, and it took about 2 years for the the transition happened earlier this year. And, we're a really small organization. So, I was actually the organization's first full-time hire, because Guillermo had been this visionary who had a full-time job and a big life. So he had put together this gorgeous foundation and this vision for the organization, sort of with like sticks and glue and volunteers and like sweat equity, And so, in the last few years, we've been kind of focused on growing sort of in like a startup mode, for lack of a better term, where we've really been scaling the organization. Now we have a bunch of full-time members and like a lot of like kind of programmatically rich approaches.
Completely. Your website is fantastic.
Oh, thanks.
And it's filled with fantastic resources like 10 ways to help the bees. Tell us a few of those.
Okay, well, they're all very easy. Anyone can do them. Chemical pesticides are
not my Lord.
So that's an easy one. Don't use them.
Don't use them. And we won't even get into the Bee and Bird Protection Act. We'll save that for another time.
That's neonicotinoids. But also plant native species if you can. If you garden, find out what used to grow there before people were bringing in like palm trees and like interesting things from.
Oh yes, of course. The invasive species. Yeah, of course.
But also because those native flowers have co-evolved with all those native bee species over centuries. So that like literally that is a food source that they depend upon. So as we start not only just taking away green spaces, but also planting green spaces that food that specialist bees, which only eat one thing, can't access, we're basically starving them out of like their own regions. I will say that there are bees that are generalists. I'm a generalist. I eat everything. And so, there are bees that do that as well. But really planting native species in your area can go such a long way. And lastly, I'll say one quick one, which is don't mulch. Like if you can, avoid that mulch, because as I mentioned, 70% of the bees are underground. That means they're building little tunnels, and that's where they lay their eggs for next year. And when you mulch, it's basically putting a big, heavy carpet
on top, of course.
And it's like, you are doomed. You can never come out. You can't get in. So don't mulch. And there are solutions like low grasses and other cover crops that suppress weeds. Like there are things you can do that are also very pretty, frankly. So yeah, that's another big one.
And the contemplation of, as we talked about in the climate cabaret, the allowing portions of your yard. And I know that this is potentially not a happening thing. Of course, not necessarily in New York where you don't even have a yard, but I'm thinking more in suburbia where people like to just completely keep everything manicured, and allowing a portion of it, if not all of it, to turn into some sort of meadow. And yes, indeed. And planting those pollinator seeds. And you'll be proud of me. I did make a little bee water feeding bee bath,
or a bee watering hole, I guess.
A watering hole, that's exactly. And I put a big, huge crystal in it that they could crawl up on when it was really hot a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
Oh, so sweet.
Shallow dish, a little bit of water, some rocks for them to step on so they can.
Yeah. Well, when we've got to take a break, but when we come back, I do want to talk about, the big edge of all of this is how we move forward with moving ourselves out of overwhelm and out of hopelessness and into action. And So when we come back with Rebecca Louie, we will get her opinion on that, what she does, and we will also find out what is her leading edge on the edge of every day with Rebecca Louie. Stay tuned.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
In a post-COVID world, you may have many unanswered questions regarding your health. Are you looking to live a healthier lifestyle? Do you have a desire to learn more about mental health and enhance your quality of life? Or do you just want to participate in self-understanding and awareness? I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each Thursday, I will tackle these questions and work to enlighten you. Tune in every Thursday at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will be Frank About Health to advocate for all of us.
Calling all pet lovers.
Pet Avengers, assemble!
On the Professionals and Animal Lovers show, we believe the bond between animal lovers is incredibly strong. It mirrors that bond between pets and their owners. Through this program, we come together to learn, educate, and advocate.
Join us live every Wednesday at 2 p.m. at talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Chipping around, kick my brain to the ground. These are the days it never rained, but it pours on the edge of every day.
And we are back. So yes, this big that you and I were talking about in our pre-chat, this big edge of, how do we move people out of overwhelm into taking action and move people out of hopelessness into taking action. And really at the heart of it, in my opinion, way bigger than those two things, is moving people out of their addiction to a consumptive consumer life. And and I know I'm guilty of it. So what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that?
Maybe to start with the last thing you said, I don't approach things like through a lens of, like, I personally, I don't think of the guilt or the overwhelm, which I think is probably why I've enjoyed this weird transition my life has taken. And in terms of consuming, I love consuming food. Clothes are fun, like all of the riches that this earth and each other, creativity has given us. But I think it's in the how. It's always in how and what you consume, right? Bingo. So, for example, my entire outfit is thrifted today, right? So
mine too.
Yes, but that's, then you have this joy of finding things and giving them not only new life and then also imbibing them with your spirit, but also taking the
it feels more ritualistic indeed.
Yeah, and it's better for the environment. And it comes to the food you eat, for example. And so food, obviously, between the composting and the bees, it starts with the bees, it ends with the composting for me. It's very full circle. Who are your growers? Where are you getting your food from? So I think, it's not anti-consume, but it's how consume. I get obviously that there are patterns that, I read a lot of web comics. There's this app and there's serialized stories, and I can't get enough. And it's hours later, and I pay for coins to get the next episode. But because it's my own release, but really that's probably about other stuff, right? It's a self-soothing. And I think once we start to identify the patterns that link consumptive behavior to self-soothing versus just consuming, because hey, we're on this, let's live our life. That's beautiful.
Yeah, but again, it's how do we consume?
Yeah.
And
why?
and why? And when we go out and we purchase what we need to purchase, what's the whole story around that?
Right.
Exactly.
And frankly, paying, like, where you put your money also is how, in a lot of ways, you vote. Some could argue our consumer power is more powerful than because we're helping to like support the building of like different types of, you know, systems around us.
Completely.
So like, you know, the organic food thing, like obviously it's been around for decades and decades, and then it started to creep in and it was weird and crunchy, then it was inaccessible and expensive, and now like Target, Walmart, like there's all this organic stuff everywhere, which is a revolution through the dollar because it was economically viable to go.
Yeah.
You know?
Although no, I'm not 100% sure it's always where they say it's organic, it's actually organic, but you know, that's for another conversation. We'll go down that rabbit hole another time. But yeah, and the overwhelm and certainly I've had other people on that moving, and the Climate Cabaret was about moving people out of overwhelm and into hopefulness and out of hopelessness, and use the gift of storytelling and the emotional connection to move people out of the emotional connection to consumerism into the emotional connection of doing something in a bigger way that is, you know, for the health of the planet, for the health of the bees, for the health of the soil, the ecosystems in which we are a huge, enormous part. And I think the interconnectedness is what I always come back to, that I'm always astounded that we have gotten so disconnected. And I, as a spiritual person and as a spiritual leader, I put, you know, faith traditions in that, you know, that somehow have propagated the understanding that we are somehow different from and above and better than the rest of all of the beings on the earth. And that, you know, so it's a constant, and there is no definitive answer right now. We're just musing, and how do we make that happen?
You know what I like about that, or maybe a different take on that, is that what I find so joyful about watching a worm poop on my
totally,
or like, you know,
and I love the smell.
It has nothing to do with me. Again, like it preceded me. It's going to be there after. It's this whole logic.
Exactly.
Like watching aliens and like do their thing, and that's humbling because I don't know. Like when you watch like thousands of bees making decisions together, you know, the hive mind. Yeah, or like I squirted this wax out of my glands and now there's a perfect like hexagon. Like what does that mean, right? And so we have access to a higher order by just kind of surrendering to it. So if we're going to play with a bug for a while, that's pretty cool because that bug has this whole universe that, you know, has nothing to do with you and has nothing to do with drama at work and like who didn't swipe on you, or like it has nothing to do with that. I think swipe on you. But whatever, people swipe.
Yes, totally. You know? No, it's perfect. The Zen of Rebecca Louie.
Oh God. That perfect model of Zen over here.
I know. I love it. That's your next book. That is your next book. And speaking of your leading edge, after you write the Zen of Rebecca Louie. So what is your leading edge? What edge? What's next for you? What's the next project for you? Is there something that you've been wanting to do that you've keep pushing back? Is there a project that, you know, what's next for you?
Well, this is one of those therapy questions, and now like I'm going to like weep.
I can't help myself. You know that.
Yeah. So, well, the short immediate answer is I'm actually starting to focus on my personal health. So I've been exercising more and eating just a little bit better for a bunch of reasons. And I've been lazy about that, but lucky that I didn't have to be as rigorous. And now I'm starting to pay attention. So that's important because health is wealth.
Beautiful.
And the bigger dream, but it's not a dream. It will be the third act. I'm still just starting the second, I like to say. But, you know, ultimately getting back to the storytelling, right? Like, I'd love to, you know, write that novel or TV show or a weird webcomic or whatever. That sort of takes the themes that I'm sort of most preoccupied by that are very, very human. Like, oh, we're lonely or we're sad or we feel disempowered or overwhelmed, right? And then kind of tell it through a lens of, you know, I'm kind of interested in like speculative style fiction, like something futuristic or slightly left of, regular. That's it, slightly left of regular. So,
I love this.
But folks will have to wait around for a while.
Oh, my Lord. Well, I can't wait. And by the way, I ordered your book, Compost City. So, so I'm expecting a big fat autograph. Thank you very much.
Great.
Okay. So, where do people find you? They can find you at the Compostist.com, which I know you're more on Instagram. It's also at the Compostus.
Yeah.
You're on LinkedIn, and you're the Conservancy.org, which is an amazing resource. You can find Compost City. Can you find that on Compost everywhere?
Books are sold.
Or everywhere books are sold. I know I don't want to say Amazon, but you can get it. Yes. Call your local store and order it.
Yes.
Some resources. I came across some amazing resources. The Honey Trail, In Pursuit of Liquid Gold and Vanishing Bees. And I was just gifted a book that's kind of fun. Bee Time, Lessons from the Hive by Mark Winston. For everyone's ever ongoing bee immersion.
And book club.
And book club. And of course, Rebecca's Compost City will be your first composting book club selection. Actually, it could also be about the bees because they're very connected. As we said, all things bees, all things composting, and all things food justice. So, Ms. Louie, it has been a pleasure to have you on my show. I thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and your insight and your humor and your beauty with us this evening.
Sandra, thank you for having me and for always pushing everyone's edge and exploring the dance along it. This has been a real treat and pleasure, so thank you.
Thank you. And to all of you listening, thanks for being with us. Run, don't walk, Compost City. And remember, you are always at the edge of the miraculous. Till I see you next week, take good care.
This is our last dance. This is our last dance. This is ourselves under pressure. Under pressure. Under pressure.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you on edge? Hey, we live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in. I'm Sandra Bargeman, the host of The Edge of Every Day, which airs each Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and perspectives about pushing boundaries and exploring our rough edges. That's The Edge of Every Day on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
Calling all pet lovers.
Pet Avengers, assemble!
On the Professionals and Animal Lovers show, we believe the bond between animal lovers is incredibly strong. It mirrors that bond between pets and their owners. Through this program, we come together to learn, educate, and advocate.
Join us live every Wednesday at 2 p.m. at talkradio.nyc.
post-COVID world, you may have many unanswered questions regarding your health. Are you looking to live a healthier lifestyle? Do you have a desire to learn more about mental health and enhance your quality of life? Or do you just want to participate in self-understanding and awareness? I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each Thursday, I will tackle these questions and work to enlighten you. Tune in every Thursday at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will be Frank About Health to advocate for all of us.
Are you passionate about the conversation around racism? Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. TLC, host of the Dismantle Racism Show, which airs every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc. Join me and my amazing guests as we discuss ways to uncover, dismantle, and eradicate racism. That's Thursdays at 11 o'clock a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.